back. It is right around 9:20 on this 13th day of April in the heart of the Riverbend. That's downtown Alton. Coming up in just a few short weeks, April 27th. I know this month is flying by. You could immerse yourself in a fantastic lecture at LaMays Catering. Joining us now is Nicole Virgil. She's a Christian Science practitioner and lecturer. Her lecture at LaMays titled Be Set Free on April 27th. Nicole, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Sure, good to be here.
So take us through this. How long have you been in practicing Christian Science, if you don't mind me asking, and how long have you been a lecturer in this field?
Yeah, okay, sure. Well, I've been practicing Christian Science my whole life. I was raised in it.
Okay.
But I have been in the public practice, meaning helping other people with Christian Science healing and addressing issues through prayer for about 17 years.
Wow. So you've been able to see, have a big track record of some pretty good tenure of what you've been practicing, what you've been lecturing about, correct?
Yeah. Well, it's been my life's work. And you did ask about the lecturing. The lecturing is the newer component. I started lecturing for the public last September.
Wow. So I got to ask you, you're almost a year into the lecturing circuit. How's everything going? Were there some learning curves along the way?
Yeah, of course, there's a learning curve. I feel like I'm still on that learning curve. I'll probably be on it for a while, but that's good. I enjoy it very much. I love speaking with and engaging with the public and talking about Bible-based liberty, how people can find freedom in their lives. I enjoy it a lot.
Absolutely. And just to kind of break the ice a little bit more, you want to talk about a learning curve. You should have seen me get this interview ready to go. For the folks at home that don't realize it, we were scrambling for about a minute and a half there, but we all got it together, always a learning curve. But this is really cool. So this is at LaMays Catering, which is a great venue on Broadway, right in downtown Alton. Take us through this. So what time does your speaking engagement start? And take us through what Be Set Free is all about.
Yeah, so it starts at 7:30 p.m. And you said where it is. It's at LaMays Catering. And it's really a talk about Bible-based liberty. Freedom is a topic that's close to my heart. I know it's close to the heart of a lot of people. Everybody wants to be free. And people seem to be limited in, let's say, in their range of motion in a variety of different ways, whether it's economic or physical or relational, circumstantial, there's all different ways that people feel limited, that their range of motion, they just can't do what they would like to do in their lives. And so this talk is an exploration about some of what the Bible has to say about where do we find our freedom? What's the purpose for our freedom? Is it just to do what we want to do, or is there some other purpose? And if you want to find your freedom, just like anything else, if you want to find your keys, you have to know where to look for them, right? Before you start looking, you should know where to look.
Right.
And so the Bible has plenty to say about all these things, where, the location of liberty, the purpose of liberty. Are there any expectations once you find your freedom? Are there any standards for those who would maintain their freedom? So that's what we'll be talking about over the hour.
Awesome. And I don't want to give away too much or, give the whole lecture here, because that's what the 27th is for. But, take us through, if you could, your youth and you discovering and you developing these skills that, are critical. What were some of those, situations that occurred that, you kind of had to learn this model that you're talking about on the 27th? Has this been an ever, an always on journey? Or has there been some stopping points along the way to kind of redevelop, reevaluate those skills?
Well, I know everybody has a unique journey, and so I won't suggest that the path that I followed is the path that everyone does or everyone needs to. Certainly not. But I can tell you that my background is in music. And so I trained to be an opera singer from a pretty young age.
Wow.
And that it has a pretty rigorous course of study if you wish to accomplish the end goal. And so what I really enjoyed about singing was engaging with the music and sharing my love of the music with the audience, right? That's why people get into, music lifts us all up. And yet, in order to be free to do that, there is some discipline required.
Right.
And that's kind of baked into it. So that's kind of the context that my background provided for me to understand if you want to be free to function at a high level, here's the steps that must be taken. It's not personal. Everybody who wishes to achieve this goal must train accordingly and not as they would like to. There's certain rules. There's a principle that undergirds this work, right? And so those who yield to that principle find success in executing and exercising their freedom. And I don't suppose that was directly said to me. It's rather competitive in the music world, even when you're a teenager, everybody's pretty much just got their nose to the grindstone working on it. But it is heavily implied and definitely inferred by those musicians that if you want to be free, here's the pathway. You must go this way. It's not just up to your will, right?
Right.
Now, there's certainly creativity that comes into it, but the creativity is subject to the technique. If you have no technical expertise, then you don't have much creativity. So that's where I started learning those lessons, and it definitely has unfolded in my life through I eventually applied this to gardening when I turned my backyard into an organic garden.
Really cool.
Homeschooling when I was teaching my two children basic, educational principles. In all the different departments of life, if we would be free, we must be first principled when we have to know where to look for that. So I don't know if that's a complete answer to your question, but it gives you a little context from my background.
Absolutely. And it really does, because I mean, so many times, when you have these type of engagements, these type of lectures, to me, it's not even, I think everybody can learn something, from what you're teaching, from what you're speaking about, because, you've walked down that path, and whatever, your journey of life took you, you're right. We all have to do the same. And Nicole, it just bums me out. It's like, why can't I just not do anything and get what I wanted to do out of life? It's like, but in all seriousness, what's been your experience with, talking to the youth about this very topic? Because I know that especially right now with social media, TikTok, you name it, everyone sees these individuals doing really fun and exciting things, and they think that that's what they want to do, or, that's what they want to be. But what are your kind of guidelines with that when you have somebody that's younger talking to you about this very topic, when they have all these, external distractors that are all around?
Well, of course, each case, when I work as a Christian Science practitioner helping people, this is a one-on-one relationship. So just to delineate the difference between giving a public lecture, which is designed for anybody, when I'm talking to someone one-on-one, I really address their individual state of thought, their individual state of consciousness. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to characterize exactly what I would say to one individual, but I could give you some examples. Like, for example, one of the things that I noticed with social media and kids who get so absorbed or sucked into, or even sometimes the word addicted to is used, there's this illusory component. It looks like things are a certain way, but that doesn't mean they are that way, right? Just the appearance of something is not the substance of a thing. And so if it's a teenager, if it's one of my teenagers at home, frequently they're skeptical, right? Because these illusions can look so convincing. And so depending upon the age of the kid, when my kids were younger, we would talk about, those funhouse mirrors. When you go into like a carnival, they have a funhouse, and the mirrors are distorted so that you can be standing there and you look in the mirror and it can make you look like you're 2 feet shorter or 2 feet taller or 5 feet wider, right? And you could say, and this is the way I've explained it to many kids, like, but I'm looking in the mirror. I can see that it makes me look like I'm short, right? But because you know who you are, and this is where freedom goes to, freedom is within, you have to know who you are. When you know who you are, the image in the distorted mirror is not convincing to you. But if you don't know who you are, you might look in this mirror and think, oh my gosh, I'm very, very short. I better go buy pants for someone who's very, very short. I better make decisions based off this illusory information. Well, it's illusory. And so most people know, most kids have been to a carnival. That example can sometimes break through it. If not that one, there's many others which, different people can relate to how they've gotten tricked by the appearance of something instead of the substance of the thing. So that's one approach.
Well, and honestly, that I think hits the nail on the head for not directly, but in a way related to a lot of the youth. Because Nicole, you don't know this, but I owned a business when I was 17. I was in high school, owned a business. I was delivering for Cisco. Life was very good. But then I looked in the mirror and I saw this, Wolf of Wall Street type of kid that's going to go out there and shake the stock market, but all reality is that's not really who I was. That's just who I perceived to be in that, because I didn't know who I was. It's a great observation because, I went through that journey and I went through the turbulences and trials of that and moved forward. But in your lecture coming up on April 27th at LaMays Catering, I got to ask you, is this for, just someone who practices the Christian Science faith? Can this be for anybody on the street that wants to get some insightful information?
Yes, CJ, thank you for asking that question. I should have addressed that myself right at the top. This is a public lecture.
Awesome.
So we would love it if there were way more people from the public there than Christian Scientists. This is something that someone can attend if they've never heard of Christian Science. If they're just thinking, you know what, I'd like to gain a higher sense of freedom. I would like more freedom at work. Yes. I'd like more freedom in my relationships. I'd like more economic freedom. I'd like more physical freedom. This is really for anyone. I will start at the very beginning and we'll have lots of anecdotes and examples that deal with even the issue of civil liberties and how people have struggled with freedom in that regard in terms of racism. So freedom is ours when we know where to look for it. And so that really involves all of humankind, right? So this is a lecture for everyone.
And I completely agree. And I really do mean that. I think this is something that's really insightful because, even if you aren't, like you just said, you're going through something in your personal life, or maybe you just, there's something holding you back, or there's something there that is not connecting, why not attend this, lecture and get some more insightful information? And if you don't mind me asking, and I always ask this just because, we have listeners that are always kind of a little leery, is this, one of those things where if somebody is, let's just say non-denominational, they don't know what they, what faith they practice, they just know they have some, or maybe they don't have any, are they going to have to, worry about, being converted that day to the church, or can they just go in and enjoy, in the most respectful way? I mean that because, there are folks that think, oh, I don't want to go because what if they try to, get me to do this today? We aren't going to have that at LaMays on the 27th, are we?
No, you're not going to have that. Firstly, that's just not how we roll. That's
right.
Not what we do. But also, it might be useful for the public to know that written down in the teachings of Christian Science is that we are not allowed to proselytize like that to people. It's specifically articulated to us in our teachings. We're supposed to practice and live according to the instructions of Christ Jesus. It's supposed to be our lives themselves which demonstrate it. And if our lives don't demonstrate our capacity to practice the teachings of Christ Jesus, then you don't have anything to say about it.
Wow. That's very insightful, Nicole. And I mean that, and I didn't mean to ask that in a derogatory or disrespectful way. It's just, sometimes, folks always ask that, and it's great to know, but that's very insightful. And I wanted to ask you, with all the, the static going on in the world today, no matter what aisle you're from, no matter what, region you live in, there's always something. And, as we're wrapping this interview up, I told you 15, we're going a little bit longer than that. What's your big takeaway for what this speech, what this lecture that you're giving could correlate to, with all this outside noise when we're just trying to, live our best life and figure out who we are as people?
Oh, well, I'll give you a little teaser or spoiler.
Oh, great. I like it.
I think of, there's an analogy that the discoverer and founder of the Christian Science Church, Mary Baker Eddy, she makes an analogy about God and us, or God and his creation. And she calls God the central sun, like, the core of things, right?
Right.
And so the core of the sun is what powers everything. That's the engine. And we, according to the first chapter of Genesis, are the expression of that sun. We're the image of it, which is to say the rays. And so if you think of this analogy of the core of the sun and the rays, what does that show us about harmony and our identity, right? You'll notice the rays are not needing to regulate each other, that the core positions all the rays. And to the degree that we recognize our relationship to the core, we are then secondarily in harmony with all the other rays. It's not that we have to fight to be in harmony with the rays. We just have to recognize that the ray doesn't exist without the core. And so the core creates us, maintains us, energizes us, feeds us, positions us. And that's how we know ourselves. We don't exist separate from the core. The ray doesn't get to say, oh, I want to go do my own thing over here, right?
Right.
The ray only exists as it relates to the core. So we can each open our eyes to this relationship with the core, God, and in so doing, it shows us a harmonious relationship, or the capacity for it, with our fellow man. That's just a little snippet.
Hey, that's the best way we could wrap this conversation up, because that's a great tease of what's to come. Be Set Free, April the 27th at LaMays Catering. Nicole Virgil, thank you so much for giving us some of your time, and I hope you have a great turnout, and I hope the lecture circuit is very kind to you, and the best of luck as you enter year 2 of this tenure with your lecturing.
Thank you very much for having me, CJ. I hope you can make it to the lecture.
Absolutely. No problem, and thank you so much. We'll take a quick break here. We'll come back, wrap up the 9 o'clock hour right here in this Thursday. We are already almost to Friday. Wow. In the heart of the Riverbend on this 13th day of April. We'll come right back after this.